Welcome everybody to a brand new episode of Overcast. This one is a little bit different because it's only the two of us talking about a very spicy subject. I don't know how to put this. Yes, it is in regards to the raid finale cinematic, the second one, not the intro one, the second one, where we finally understand everything that was behind the jailer and the purpose and point of Shadowlands. Oh boy,
Jesus Christ! Oh my
God, it's a lot to unpack, guys, and we decided to make this into a podcast. Before we get all of the boys in and talk about systems and other issues with classes and all of that stuff, but this one is something that we feel
it's kind of close to our hearts. We're both very, or at least were very big fans of the World of Warcraft universe and the World of Warcraft story in general.
Yep.
And it's no surprise to anybody that the story in Shadowlands has been lacking, and it's been lacking in very critical areas that kind of, at least personally, gets me worried about the future of this story. But let's actually dive in, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the podcast so that you get notified whenever if you are on YouTube, and of course if you listen on every other platform, that's perfectly fine. And if you want to support us a bit more, you can go on YouTube and like and subscribe, and check the links down below in the description.
Yeah, there's a lot of links there for us. All right, so by now, I'm hoping that everybody saw the cinematic. We're not going to go into a cinematic analysis because everybody and their mom did that. We're just going to discuss on what is to take from that. So basically, the jailer is killed, and after he gets killed, he has this moment, I would say like a flashback, where he was first punished or sent into the maw, and he gets all of the lines, from the Archon, from the Winter Queen, from the Natrius. I thought the Natrius was the coolest one. It kind of gave the premise of them eventually working together. And really weird, I felt, was the Primus, who was not shown. It would just saw his shadow asking him why. Remember, okay, just keep in mind this. I'm going to get back to this, why the Primus did not appear. So when the Primus asked why he went through all of this shit, Zoval says that we preserve something which is doomed. And a cosmos divided is not will not survive what is to come. Fuck you. It's all after. So that was my reaction.
Bullshit,
after
man.
I saw that, my reaction was fuck you. So you had us dangling the fucking wait, there's more with Sylvanas. You had us wait, there's more with N'Zoth. Remember what N'Zoth said? You'll need me for what is to come. Something along those lines.
There's always something to come, man.
Fucking hell. Would you just stop already? Listen, I'm going to say this right now. I know this is not the end of the expansion. We still have 9.25, and there's a chapter that has been cut, and there's still a cinematic going. I know this is the raid finale. But traditionally, bitches, you concluded every fucking expansion with the cinematic of the raid finale. So don't give me no shit, okay? This is the conclusion of Shadowlands as far as I'm concerned. And no matter what you say now, it's gonna be fuck all. One other thing. If they do have some sort of interesting ending or explanation, at least, for Shadowlands, I would dare say that, okay, everybody's pissed, but I think no matter how they would have ended this expansion's story and explained it, people would still be pissed. In general, because this was the vibe of the whole Shadowlands story. Conclusion or not, explanation or not, the drawbacks, the final things that we can take out of this, for me at least, was why did you do Shadowlands? What was the whole idea, the whole purpose of us going into the afterlife realm, creating a brand new villain, which in my opinion is, I've seen villains more interesting in cartoons, man. In Tom and Jerry, the cat that was a gangster, that was Tom's cousin, that dude felt more menacing, man. Hold on. That dude felt more menacing and interesting than fucking Nipple Boy. You know what I'm saying? They felt so hard on delivering this villain, and the problem is, I think the biggest problem is that they tied this piece of shit to everything that was, I would dare say, sacred to the Warcraft lore. So basically,
Are you talking about Arthas right now?
Everything, like since Warcraft, you remember like that in that promotion, like that dev in when they previewed 9.2, right? You remember there was the news there and a lot of other people, and he said basically that Shadowlands 9.2 will conclude and close off a chapter from that started in Warcraft 3. Are you shitting me, man?
Was that because of the Arthas Soul? All right. So the thing is, the way that they're designing the Shadowlands story and subsequent, and going into this pretty much all of the other stories as well. This is where I am.
Hey, Flame.
It's a problem of inconsistency and constant retconning. And it started pretty much, I think, back in Legion when Sylvanas became a war chief. But because the characters are inconsistent, it's kind of hard not to have the why type of reactions, since you cannot believe the direction in which the story is going. The problem, again, with the Jailer as well is that it feels like it was made up last second. The revelation of Sylvanas' character was seemingly made up last second. Let me preface, before we go deeper into the story, let me preface by saying this, which to me as a player, and generally, let's say, if we're gonna be assuming the perspective of we're being told the story, as the reader of a story, let's say, it is unacceptable to create a world with characters like Arthas Menethil, Varian Wren, and Saurfang, especially with all its fault that BFA had. It developed Saurfang into an interesting character that was kind of like a third-rate character up until that point. It became an interesting character that you associated with and connected with emotionally. You cannot have a world with these characters in where they die, and then you say that, oh, they died because Sylvanas killed them with the machine to fuel the machine of death for a purpose, which we can get into in a minute, and then go into Shadowlands where they're supposed to be. They're supposed to be in the Maw because they died unlawfully and they weren't judged by the Arbiter because the Arbiter was shut down by Argus's soul, so she couldn't function anymore, and all of the souls were going straight into the Maw. You cannot create this world and we go into the Maw and we don't meet them at all, and everything that we get from them is a little soul connection that Anduin has with them as he's trying to free himself from the domination's grasp.
And some nipples.
He just wanted to say nipples.
Yeah.
That is unacceptable from a storyteller perspective. If you cannot develop a character that you will have a closure for, then you don't develop a character at all. This is not a proper closure. Arthas had a really good closure at the end of Icecrown. He sees the memory of his dad, his eyes are closed, he goes to sleep, he dies, and he stops being the king.
Listen, man,
forever.
Listen, we have to face the truth here. Obviously, a lot of the old guard, and I would say not the old guard in general. So I'm just going to address that. The former, I would say, writers team, writing team from WoW, they're not there anymore. It shows. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, different concepts and different, stories or different lights placed on the WoW universe could be a good thing. This time around, it didn't happen. Now, I know a lot of people from the old guard, Frasiab included, were just like, horrendous freaks who should have gone. But the thing is, those that were like decent human beings and contributed to the WoW story for this many years, they managed to create a universe and characters that people would get emotionally involved with. This is the key factor to any story, I feel. If you cannot get me emotionally involved in some capacity, you've lost all interest, because as humans, if you're not a psycho or whatever, you feel emotions like fear, like love, like anxiety, like there's a lot of things. And stories deliver this. Relatability is also a key factor. I could not relate for shit to anything in this expansion. Tell me what was relatable to you even in a fantasy form. Like whenever you imagine yourself being this super mega buff chat warrior wielding two arms and carrying the flag for your faction and your people or whatever. Even in that fantasy capacity, that imaginative capacity that you have, how could you relate, or where could you relate to everything that happened in Shadowlands? I don't get it. Not to mention the fact that for me, my friend, it doesn't make any fucking sense to have a portal to the afterlife. Why live? Like, why is it important now to live or die as a character? Because we have portals. Listen, think about it. We have a portal from the afterlife to Orgrimmar. It's like, okay, I want to talk to...
It was one thing if when we deliberately were pulled from the Ice Crown into Shadowlands, and obviously we're going to have a portal to Orgrimmar because it's an MMO. I know.
But
after that, if people keep coming into the Shadowlands to help out with our cause, that doesn't make any sense.
It loses its charisma.
The thing is, there are fundamental problems. Okay, the old guard left, right? But we're talking about basic story and world building. You build a World of Warcraft that it's heavily inspired, and you can see what everyone is heavily inspired by the Tolkien world, the fantasy,
and Warhammer.
Tolkien is and
Warhammer.
Yeah, it's a Warhammer as well. Tolkien is the big daddy of fantasy, big daddy of high fantasy with orcs, elves, and as well. You can look it up in the epitemiology. Jesus, I don't know what the word is. Similar of the origin of the words orc and goblin and stuff like that, and you can see that Tolkien pulled them from Old English and transformed them to mean whatever the creatures he created into Lord of the Rings became to be. And from that, other stuff was born. And then you had the World of Warcraft and Azeroth. I keep pressing that button, man. And the thing is, if you want to create a world that's believable and people get invested in, it has to be a world consistent. It cannot be riddled with retcons. And it hasn't been consistent because it's constantly been riddled with retcons. One of the things is Sylvanas, which was retconned ever since Legion, or maybe even earlier. And another thing is the Helm of Domination, which was supposedly created by Kil'jaeden to create a Lich King on the world of Azeroth, to weaken the world of Azeroth so that the Legion can easily invade it. But right now, the Helm of Domination was created under the orders of Zovaal, sent by the Nathrezim, who are not actually demon, but they're the Nathrez's minions that have just drank a lot of fell bullshit and turned themselves into demons and tricked Sargeras to be in their legion so that they could give the Helm of Domination to Kil'jaeden, so that he could give the Helm of Domination to Ner'zhul, so that he could give the Helm of Domination to Ardas to rule over Azeroth, to weaken it against the Legion. And that was supposedly the Jailer's plan.
So you can have Sylvanas come along and break it. Hey!
So you have this, obviously this was never the plan. When we played Wrath of the Lich King, we weren't like, oh, I bet the Jailer's behind all this. No, the Jailer was a character that was created on the way, and they had to make him make sense. Instead of just creating a whole new story for him, they had to intertwine his character, and because of this, they ruined, first of all, Sylvanas. They ruined the Shadowlands, which was supposed to be a realm of the Loa, where the spirits of trolls and, let's say, the druidic and shamanistic world of trolls and whoever believed that went. Cool. And if you really pay attention to the chronicles, the trolls were the original race on Azeroth that since evolved into elves, and after that, with the curse of the flesh from the old gods, created the dwarves and the humans and so on. So trolls were here kind of first, in a sense. So the Shadowlands is a primordial and primal concept that was fucked in the butt with the Jailer and with Sylvanas and with all of this. That fell and it made no sense. Then Arthas makes no more sense. The Helm of Domination makes no more sense. The Crown of Wills. Have you done the story this week?
No. Then we'll get to it.
That's the problem with the inconsistency when the world is created, and that bleeds into characters that are inconsistent and constantly retcon. I think the only really good retcon that they did was Illidan in Legion. It's hard to do a good retcon.
I know. It's a challenge for sure. But Shadowlands, like, for real, did not have any standout characters whatsoever. Like, I feel they really done bad Tyrande. Like, that whole Night Warrior thing really felt on its ass. Like, what? Like, this was such a build-up and nothing.
Where's Nathanos?
We know. I there's data mine for that. Well, I'm not gonna get into that. Here's the deal. They had to create a new threat, a new villain. I understand that. And it's not easy, especially in such an established lore. I get it's not easy. On the other hand, you have a bunch of people who allegedly have experience in storytelling and developing stories, or being part of, or being quote-unquote apprentices of the old guys that kind of created this universe, and you would expect that they would have some better ideas on hand when delivering or creating a villain. Because this is, I feel, the whole problem with Shadowlands. There's a lot of them in the story, but the biggest one is, how do you make me motivated to kill this bastard? Because I could not care less. The only like standout thing about Zoval at this point are his nipples. Everybody talks about his nipples. Is this the nipple boy? That's it. Other than that, there's nothing. They failed to deliver a proper villain, and this was supposed to be the biggest villain out of them all in the Warcraft universe. Like, he was responsible for basically everything since Warcraft 3. He was the mastermind of everything. He put into motion all of those things. He even said so in the intro cinematic on before you fight him. Like, all the pieces. Long time have I waited for this. All the pawns at play, or all that bullshit. And I'm so like frustrated and angry because they basically tainted this shit throughout all of the happenings in Warcraft 3 and World of Warcraft altogether. And this is it, man. They did this, and now it's there. Moving forward, I really do hope like the next story is cool or whatever, and it makes more sense and has interesting characters. But this is already tainted. Something will be related to this because it's there. They cannot just wipe it now. It's done. It's bad. We have to live with it. Now, I want to get back a little bit to what I was saying about the Primus, because very interestingly enough, he's the only one who doesn't appear in the cinematic. Now, this is one thing that I have to point out. They should have built Zoval right from the get-go. They should have enabled and explained his reasons, his motives. How does he know about this bigger threat? Because it sounds to me that he basically, in fact, wants to unite the cosmos with what he's doing. Or at least with the so-called end of reality, create a reality where he would dominate everything, but we would have a united cosmos and be able to survive what is to come. Explain this at the beginning of the expansion. I don't know, this is just a feeling I have. And I think I saw a post somewhere that a clip, and Taliesin made a really good point about this. This last cinematic just oddly feels that it would belong more at the intro of Shadowlands, not the end of it. Because if you think about it, this is a flashback, right? Where you see Zoval without his domination. So obviously this is his judgment moment, right? This is a starter point to what is to come. Okay, it's a motivational arc, but more importantly, the Primus is not there. And if you remember, we only saw the Primus in how he appears in 9.1. It's a very interesting detail to notice. Why does he not appear in this cinematic? I feel, and this is all speculation, and I feel that this was actually planned to be a cinematic that was somewhere placed at the beginning of Shadowlands, and it would have made much more sense, trust me. It wouldn't be it wouldn't be enough to explain and build up Zoval. But Jesus Christ, we knew nothing about him. We knew nothing about his motivation. All we knew was that he wants to end reality. Death is coming for the soul of your world, and big, sharp blue nipples.
Well, this is we clearly have issues with the story, and I think we're approaching it from different perspectives, which I think is great. Because I'm approaching it from a raw, basically analytical perspective, where I'm looking at a couple of characters because I'm supposed to be engaged into the story and I'm supposed to care. And most of this outrage comes from the fact that we have been emotionally involved, and you cannot have emotionally involved people in your story and then just cut them off like that. That creates this outrage, because you could say, like, what do you even care? If you don't like it, just go home. But that's not how that works. That's not how feelings work. And then you have the character of Zoval, which was supposed to be ingrained in everything. Because he had to be, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to justify his creation. Yes. Why did we have to have him in the beginning? That's mainly the main question, which doesn't matter anymore, because now we have him. But the problem is with the inconsistency of the characters. And again, with what the devs are, they're constantly trying to one-up themselves every expansion. So going from, let's say, as down-to-earth themes as possible all the way up until Warlords of Draenor, right? Where we kill Archimonde. Even though that was not the end planned for Warlords of Draenor, it was the end that we got. And after that, we go into Legion, which, to be fair, that is, to my opinion, in terms of a Warcraft story fan, the be-all, end-all villain. The only one that's higher than that were, at the time, supposed to be the Void, right? The only one that's a bigger threat than Burning Legion. And you end the Burning Legion with a sword stabbed into Azeroth, which we still don't know what the fuck about it. And then we go into BFA. Well, there has to be a bigger bad than Sargeras, and that's N'Zoth. And obviously they couldn't develop him enough because N'Zoth cannot be a patch boss. Ny'alotha cannot be a raid. It has to be a zone. It was the Black Empire. And okay, fine, we got BFA long past. Now we have Shadowlands. The stakes have to be even higher. Well, what's higher than an old god that's trying to corrupt an entire world that an intergalactic cosmic army is supposed to destroy? Well, it has to be the Lord of the Death, the Lord of the Afterlife. Okay, he wants to end realities. What does that mean?
But wait, there's more even after him.
If he has the power to end, like, okay, we have to sit down with the devs and talk about, like, what does reality mean to you guys? Because if he ends reality, that means he ends everything, void and light. So why is there a problem of a cosmos divided if he has the power to end reality? That's not even in the same argument. So the character is inconsistent. And just to make my point about inconsistent characters, we go back to Sylvanas, which I think is no surprise to anybody right now that she has been retconned to shit. But the main problem that I have with Sylvanas is like, okay, retcon her all you like. There's two main problems that I have with her. First of all, and we can go back, counter chronological order with the last cinematic that we had, where she said, when you defeat Anduin, she says, she has a very important line that says, tones that to the sins that I have selfishly committed, right? Where she, in that very moment, she is aware and responsible and guilty for everything that she has committed, meaning that she realizes that it was her free will, or her will, at least after she was free.
Not her dominated will?
Yeah, so it was her will to commit all of those crimes, even if her soul was split into, let's say, her whatever she had before the jailer put her in, and now when her soul is supposedly complete. Okay, both of those souls are valid, and of course you had, the soul that easily goes into anger and does all the war crimes that she's committed, and the one that's like, oh my god, what did I do, right? They're both a part of her, which means they're both valid and both real. And that means that the previous cinematic where Uther comes into her soul and says, this is what you've done, is like, no, this is a whole different monster. So wait a minute, is she able to accept, was she in full control of her actions? Is she able to accept everything that she done, or is she not? Because these cinematics create two different characters that are in conflict with each other. You cannot have a character that says, oh my god, I was the one that burned Teldrassil and did all this thing. And then you have a cinematic that's like, I have to atone for my sins. Well, wait a minute. Do you accept,
wait a minute, bitch.
Do you accept morally that you were responsible for it or not? So this kind of inconsistency are what creates the character. Not to mention that if you go back where Afrasiabi talked about Sylvanas in all of those BlizzCons and discussions, like, listen, she's not gonna be Garrosh 2.0. And if you listen to all the cinematics and voice lines coming from Legion when she was appointed war chief, the character that they were supposedly building that was consistent so far at the point to her character was a mastermind, a cunning mastermind that dupes everybody for supposedly a good goal achieved through wrongful means that we wouldn't agree, because that's the synthesis of an anti-hero.
Listen, there's a difference between, I would say, even Sylvanas Legion and BFA and Forward Sylvanas, because it felt that for her, first and foremost, were the Forsaken. I feel they
very
like,
important.
Yeah, they basically like scrap. They grabbed her, they pulled it out of the whole thing with the Forsaken for no apparent justification. There was never an explanation, and I feel it was such a huge misstep. But you remember we talked about this off camera, like, the whole Afrasiabi situation, and basically Afrasiabi placing the writing team into a shithole in terms of Sylvanas specifically, with the burning of Tendrassil being his idea or whatever. And at the time, I said, okay, man, so they had to like kind of make sense of all of this and be able, and it's not really their fault. And, maybe we could give the user the benefit of the doubt or whatever, especially because we learned that he worked on the Surmar campaign a lot and whatnot and a bunch of other cool quests. But the truth is, I pondered it a lot more, the last couple of weeks. The truth is, man, Shadowlands, Zoval, all of the characters being involved, Bolvar was done shit. Bane was done shit. Jaina, all of these characters right now, and the story arc of Shadowlands and Zoval and all this shit. This was not a Frasiabi, man. This was the current writing team. This is what they came up with. Sure, we can go into all of the intricate details and how a character arc could work or whatever, but as they did in BFA with Before the Storm, where that book like gave a lot more context and a lot more, I would say, understanding of the conflict and the things that were to come. I feel like the Sylvanas book will probably answer a lot more questions, because
hopefully
this is the thing. So the only character that would have, I would say, the least access of information about why and because and when is Sylvanas. Sylvanas was the closest one to the jailer, and she would probably have some answers. And if those answers are in a book, once again,
that's a problem.
It's basically them like doing the same exact thing they said they would not do. At the end of BFA, at the announcement of Shadowlands, the newser specifically said that they relied way too much of the story consistency in external media rather than within the game, and they would not repeat the same mistake. Granted, we did not have like small comic book novels like we did with the Three Sisters or whatever back in BFA, but you still have the fucking book, and you have to sell that book. And if you want to sell that book by purposefully removing like core information, reason, motive, and context from within the game story, that is just shit. And no wonder people feel disconnected from the game right now, at least story-wise. Shadowlands as a whole has been a shit show of an expansion. First of all, because of the how the pacing worked out with the game and the systems and everything, but especially because of the story and what you were trying to sell. Then again, if this book will answer the questions, and I'm afraid that it will answer even more questions than 9.2.5 would in that last cinematic. If this happens, I think it's kind of like, I don't know, man. I'm not trying to be like, tragic, prophecy on the end of the world or whatever, but it would clearly show what their intentions would be for this long. At least for Steve Denuser, who I know, at least in his LinkedIn, he does say that he's specialized in delivering story into multiple media outlets. So that means that when you have a story, you put it into a game, you put it into a book, you put it into a TV series, and you put it into some sort of other external media like comics. You basically just divide the core story into multiple media outlets. And you cannot, for the love of every player that is still trying to play this game, you cannot do that to World of Warcraft, because it hasn't been done before. Short books have been wrote for multiple years, but it was never part of the core stories of an expansion. You would have like some sort of aftermath, like War Crimes with Garrosh, right? The book. You would have explanations and like Arthas and more context and relationship with different characters. That was not core to the expansion. My fellow brothers who are supposedly in love with this game and would do everything for this game. I'm talking about the dev team, specifically the writers team. How can you just remove core aspects of the story of the game and put it into a book or some sort of other external media, when clearly it hasn't worked in BFA? It clearly most decisively hasn't worked in Shadowlands. But when the story was complete within the game and you had books just to enrich the universe and the characters alongside, not core for the story, that has worked. And the books did sell that way too. I mean, I know me, who I was only PvPing, I would still buy the lore books. That just goes to show, like, since I wasn't a lore nerd, I would still buy them because I was curious to see how did Vol'jin became, how did Varian, the Wolf Book. I was interesting to learn more about these characters, but I wouldn't feel like I've been left out because there was something missing within the main story of the game I was playing. This is the thing. So, all in all, I would say that regardless of how the conclusion would be, although as I've said at the beginning, I feel this is the conclusion, it's basically jack shit. There is something more to come, and then he dies. Thanks. I really wanted that. I really wanted that in my life. I really wanted that closure. There is no closure. There is no ending. It feels like, dude, it feels like all of the repetitive grinds and shit, like, this is how the story feels, just to keep you more artificially interesting. Oh wait, there's more. This is some Game of Thrones season 7 and season 8 stuff. And I have no personal grudge with Steve Denuser. I find him really charismatic and he has done some beautiful work. I will give him his praises. But I do know that Steve Denuser was a big fan of season 8 on Game of Thrones. And I'm sorry, my friends, think whatever you think. But if you read the books, if you watched at least the first seasons, you would see how much of a difference that is. Basically, that season was no explanation. It was just, oh, right, she forgot all about that. Daenerys, you saw it, right? I'm not spoiling it.
No, it's fine. I don't care.
Oh, okay. I forgot if you saw it or not.
I couldn't. When I got to season 8 and I started watching, like, everybody was telling me, oh, it's shit. I was like, what the fuck am I doing then?
No, you should watch it.
But that's actually a good example.
He's a fan of that.
The characters and I kind of was spoiled as to what happens with the characters. I was like, those aren't the characters that were supposed to be.
You know what the writer said? Oh, she forgot about that.
Oh yeah. But that's the thing. That's what I mean when they create inconsistent characters. And okay, I am. Although I agree with you with the way that they're supposedly telling the story through different medias. You shouldn't have the story, or at least crucial parts of the story, being put in because. The best examples, let's take, is Arthas and Illidan. Those are the ones that I've read recently. And the Book of Arthas especially tells the story of pre-Warcraft 3 Arthas and post, let's say, Warcraft 3 Arthas prior to the Lich King. But that doesn't really change how you feel about them, except maybe you empathize them a little bit more. But the thing is, let's say with Arthas, right? He was supposed to be a villain. He chose it. He wasn't corrupted or controlled. You can think whatever you want. But if in the book, it's clearly explained that at the end, when he has a moment of conscience with his own mind and his own soul, he materializes himself in his mind, Ner'zhul, who was supposedly controlling him through the Helm of Domination, and his innocence portrayed by him as a child, if I recall. And in that vision of his, in that part of his soul, he kills both of them. So it's clear that Arthas was in full control of his actions and was, let's say, his own man, right? When he made the choices, he wasn't particularly corrupted or dominated, which again contradicts the story of Arthas that we have in Shadowlands right now, that he was the pawn of the jailer, contradicts the fact that the Helm of Domination was created by the jailer, contradicts the fact that he didn't, fully choose to do everything that he ended up doing in Warcraft 3 and in Wrath of the Lich King. So that again is inconsistent in character, and my biggest problem that I was hoping it was going to be resolved in Shadowlands, that is the character of Sylvanas, because she was supposed to, everything tied around her, everything that Sylvanas did was supposed to be justified by the ending of Shadowlands, and because of the way that Sylvanas essentially had her character's, let's say, arc kind of closed, it's maybe not yet closed, still some loose threads, but her warlike persona resolved does not consist in what she's actually doing.
Yeah. It was just looking up just to make sure I have the right information. So just getting back to Steve here, who again I will praise for his contributions on a lot of the quests from Legion, a lot of the quests from BFA as well, really cool. And I would also praise even Shadowlands, because I feel like most of the Covenant stories were really nice. It really didn't end up in some sort of bombastic way, but I really enjoyed doing like almost all Covenant storylines. I think they were really cool. Now, just to get back to his thing here, so on his LinkedIn, on his about, the last thing is passion for building IP and narratives that span multiple mediums. So I stand corrected on my expression there. Narratives that span multiple mediums. That means multiple books and comics and TV series and all of that jazz. So if that is being put into play, just getting back to it, it's not good. Now, we always try to make a balance here in terms of like what we would like as players, as I would say content creators, as voices for some people who would not necessarily have the same exposure or whatever. People are invested into the story or would want to be invested into the story, but got let down multiple times. I feel they have the proper examples from the past where things worked. The problem is that they, first of all, I think the first mistake was that they kind of decanonized the Chronicles. Chronicles, when they first came out, they were supposed to be canon. Not anymore, because at BlizzCon 2019, Steve Denuser mentioned that this is from a point of view. And the problem with this is when you say something like that is from a point of view, nothing really matters anymore, because everything now will be from a point of view. You have the Grimoire of the Shadowlands, who is being wrote by cartel members. Again, that's another point of view. So where do we establish, where we put the core, where do we lay the foundation? This is the thing. It's tainted now, but I don't think it's lost. So going back to the past, because there's I wouldn't want to compare the WoW story to other games, okay? But I'm going to compare it to its own stories and universes. There's examples, multiple examples of how it should be done or how it should be corrected, okay? Varian Wren was not an interesting character in Wrath of the Lich King, nor was he he had a couple of cinematics, but nobody was really caring that much. Cataclysm, more or less. But starting from Mop, because we had Anduin there play a much more active role, and because of him we had Varian there as well. Starting from Mop, they slowly started to begin building him and changing him around into becoming interesting, to the point of Legion, where I feel they did him a disservice, but that was Frasiabi once again. He got killed, but up until that point, you kind of went and rooted for Varian because he was that alliance leader that had the badassery in him. He had the loyalty, he had the honor, but he had the fucking ruthlessness as well. And you kind of enjoyed that about him. He transformed into a wise warrior, and I know Flame was really into him, and I think at some point when we discussed about Varian, I think you said that because of Varian you would actually thought of joining the alliance.
Oh yeah, no, Varian was
cool. But that's an example. I'm gonna let you go. But yeah, that's an example where you take a boring character and you build him up to something that people could relate to and feel motivated by. So that's an example that they could take and just fix a lot of the problems with the characters, including Sylvanas. She can be a good mind, a good writer could turn Sylvanas to be an interesting character once again. It's going to be
hard. They would have to hire that person.
Yeah, it's going to be hard, but it can be happen. So back to Varian. I know you liked him a lot.
Varian basically was pretty much why one of the only reasons why I liked Alliance, and that says a couple of things, because Varian was a relatable character. He was noble, he was valorous, let's say, right? But he was also flawed. Like you said, he was ruthless. Not only ruthless, but he was prone to anger and prone to a very high temper. He was garroshy, but let's say a good version of...
More contained, a
more wise
that's
version.
So relatable, right? We can see
but that's
that.
because, in its history, right, he was fucked up by Onyxia back in
the two
Classic.
versions of Varian.
And then he experienced the Horde on both sides, right? He experienced being a gladiator. That's how he got his right. I think that's how you build a warrior leader, right? You see that person is essentially experience all aspects of life, and that's how you build a character. And the good thing about Varian is that his character, and I feel like I'm sounding like a broken record right now, but his character was consistent.
Oh.
You could expect him to make a decision, and it's not because, if everything is predictable, it's boring. No, but let's say, because you mentioned in Legion, there's the cinematic at the Broken Shore where what is it? Either Greymane or Mechatork tells him that they won't escape because the giant robot Legion dude grabbed the airplane. you knew he was gonna jump down and sacrifice himself.
Yeah, that's Greymane.
So although I agree with you in the sense that Afrasiabi made him, or whoever wrote his death did him wrong, it was a good ending. It was on my heartstrings, and it was a good ending because he was a martyr. That inspired people. That inspired Anduin to pick up his sword. That inspired Anduin to pick up his shit and actually lead. Correct. Whether or not Anduin was written right after that remains to up for
I would
debate.
say he was one of the better offs. I would say, because I feel. Okay, his journey was kind of wibbly wobbly. I'll get that.
Anduin is kind of like the only consistent character.
Consistency, once again, is the key. Yes, out of all of the characters, we kind of had, like, I have to go through this. Man, Jaina in BFA had such a cool arc. Do you remember? You didn't play Alliance, right? Because I
know her story. I did the campaign in Borealis.
So it was like so cool. She basically discovered herself and became what she is today. I was expecting something, man, to come to fruition in Shadowlands. Where is, apart from the intro quest where, you know, she makes us invisible and she teleports from
Actually, in the intro quest, she was kind of cool because she was like, fuck this shit, let's get the fuck out. And she was fucking everything around you. When you meet her for the first time, everything is frozen. The big maw dudes are all toppled over.
You would expect that from Jaina. All I'm saying is, they did such a big arc and beautiful development of Jaina in BFA, and props to them for that. Okay, we have to praise where praise is due. And it felt so weak in Shadowlands. It was basically all about Sylvanas and the jailer, more or less. The main arc. I couldn't see anything past that. It was the Sylvanas and jailer show, basically.
Do you remember that there's actually Thrall in Shadowlands as well?
What? Yeah, Thrall, man. Oh my God! They didn't. Oh Jesus, man. There's so many things that went. Okay, let's give them the benefit of doubts here. They had to do this during the pandemic. They had to do this through the whole situation within Blizzard. Like, okay, we knew about the shit show that was happening within their teams last year in summer, but the things were happening way before that. And I understand that working in that type of environment, being creative, being consistent in an environment like that can be a big challenge. Also, pandemic, as I've mentioned, and the aftermath of the lawsuit and all the turmoil that happened. These are things that will affect a creative individual. We cannot stand here and just point fingers at the news or whatever that, you know, okay, this is you should have done better or whatever. We understand that. Just basically rotating to how you would create something that would be relatable and engaging. Yeah, broken record or not, but consistency, that's the key. However fucked up times are, you still have that idea that you discussed with the team, and you have to stick to that no matter what and develop that. Don't change pain points on every patch or every cinematic just because somebody else had an idea, because it feels that the direction was not there. It feels like all over the place. Like it was like
everybody wanted to do something. It's like, I want to do my thing and I want to do my thing.
Let's do you. Oh, okay, let's do you. Fuck that. Okay, you did that. That's cool, but we're going to change it. How about you? Oh, that's a cool idea. That's how it feels. And it's all a mess, culminating with the conclusion of Shadowlands, which is wait to see.
That's and it's again, we talked a lot about consistency as well, but there's a trend that has been going on ever since I think Legion or probably BFA. And I've been really thinking about it, racking my brain around this as well, because I keep going back to Tolkien, because in Tolkien it's a very idealistic and very simple setting of good versus evil. There's clearly evil, there's clearly good, the good guys are against evil. That's, let's say, a more metaphorical way of, it's a more metaphorical story, right? It's not as realistic. But then you have stories like Game of Thrones, which is a lot more down to earth. The characters are flawed. The characters are human. They're both good and bad. And it feels like they've tried to incorporate too much of that into WoW and didn't do it properly. And one of the things that stuck out to me is that I don't know the ending of Game of Thrones yet, because the books are still, ongoing. But in fantasy stories, especially when you have magic, there's always a higher power that establishes authority. Right now, in the years coming into WoW, initially it was the light, right? The higher power, where everything stems from, or the Titans, and then
the Titans created the cosmos initially.
The
right?
Titans, Titans shaped the cosmos. The Titans
Shaped it. Okay, they gave it order, whatever.
And the Titans were supposed to symbolize whenever shit is fucked up.
The ultimate power. They were the thing.
They initially were portrayed as good.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, that's not relevant anymore.
Exactly.
Why? Because we have the first ones now. And I wouldn't be surprised if we have the original one.
I was about to say to you, what will they come up with next? But that's the problem when they try to one-up each other every time, and they have to constantly raise the stakes, which they don't have to.
Why? Yeah, exactly. Why do they have to feel that?
The stakes in Wrath of the Lich King were pretty much grounded into Azeroth. The stakes of Legion were, they were still grounded into Azeroth, although the power that came to threaten it was an external one. It was still grounded to Azeroth. We weren't trying to save the cosmos. We were trying to save ourselves, the planet.
Yeah. Listen, there's this argument, and it's fair, that, a lot of us complain about, all of this cosmology bullshit and super outworldy conflicts or whatever. Listen, the Burning Crusade was basically an cosmic expansion. We went to a different fucking world with aliens and all of that. But you know what? It still felt much more grounded and relatable than anything that happened in Shadowlands.
Do you know why? At least one of the main reasons?
Well, do tell, Flame.
Well, that was a setting that has been built for at least, 10 years prior? Because the story of the Burning Crusade started...
in Warcraft 3.
It's kind of started in Warcraft 2. Maybe even Warcraft 1.
Yeah.
In Warcraft 2, you had the campaign to go to...
I remember.
To Draenor.
I remember, but... visually and emotionally, this is the thing about Warcraft 3. We can get into that. You played with characters more. It was more RPG-ish than Warcraft 2 was. And that's when you really got a sense of, okay, this is Outworld. Okay, this is
obviously it was done better, but what I meant, it had its roots into Warcraft 2.
Yeah, I understand.
And it was built upon, it's like, okay, this is the world where the orcs came, Ner'zhul fucked it up because he wanted to open too many portals and it destroyed the planet. And now in Warcraft 3, you go with Illidan there because now it's infested with demons, and you, Mac Theoden, you overthrow Mac Theoden, and he becomes the Lord of Black Temple. This is back in Warcraft 3. And then you come into TBC, it's like, oh wait, we know this guy, and now you go to fight him.
We cannot blame this on them, because at some point they have to create new stuff. Going back to our religion saying, so at some point somebody was at that table of writers and they were talking, okay guys, we kind of milked everything that was before us. This is the thing. How many times can you talk about the Burning Legion or Arthas or whatever? So you have to create something. I get that.
Yeah,
that's important, right? They have to find some sort of threat or something. Or when I say threat, I mostly mean a motivator for players to, okay, we have to go do the raid and kill that guy or that thing or whatever. It's just that if this is all they came up with and this is how they decided to build up and shuffle and retcon every piece of rock that was landed with love and care into this game.
Let's not forget paintings.
Yes, and paintings. Yes. It's bad, and it's a sad set of affair. Unfortunate to the max. I think it's wrapping up time.
Sure.
Going forward, as I've said, there's still really positive examples in the past. Now, Ian did say that they will go back to something a bit more grounded, not as much, but they will come back to the cosmology thing because we know something is to come. So that's one thing. And also the newser in 2019 said that light and void are definitely something that they will explore in the future, that conflict. So it's going to be Cosmos once again at some point. But for now, we're going to go back. So would this mean that would it be another transition expansion that would, okay, time to just chill out a bit, more I would say some sort of Mist of Pandaria type shit? Or will it be a super solid next chapter after Shadowlands? And guys, here's I would say how many years is it now? 15-year WoW player. Here's an advice from a 15-year WoW player. You don't have to link expansions between one another. You've done it so many times. It's fine. We can get a brand new story. Conclude this bullshit-ass story from Shadowlands and let's just start something else.
We're capable of understanding a new story from scratch. And that's the thing, because whatever they end up doing, they're going to have to, and you can take this however you want, they kind of have to clean up what's after Shadowlands, because right
job.
now, if they expect us to care about any characters involved in Shadowlands, I mean, good luck with that.
know.
So either they try to repair the characters in a way, either through cinematics or short stories, and why don't we get more of the Sourfang or fully rendered cinematics like we did in BFA? You cannot just give it as like, okay, hope you like it.
BFA was cool. From that point of view, was really cool. But another good example.
BFA had Sourfang as one of the coolest characters, or maybe the only characters developed properly.
Yeah.
Then they would have to go back to the roots, and I feel like one of the good things that they could do for the story of the entire world is to start building characters from
but not like they wanted to build
like,
so far.
think about a building that you have like scales over it, and you kind of like remodel it.
But you need the foundation for it. Start with the foundation.
Yeah,
True.
well, address the foundation, address it from the inside, however way you want to, but re-establish characters and make the characters matter more. Don't give me Thrall in the middle of BFA is like, oh, we don't get to hide, and then he comes in his Sourfang's back left bodyguard for the entire time, and then he says a couple of times, and now in Shadowlands he throws an axe to Helya, and then what? He just runs around and melees shit. I mean, make us care about the characters, so kind of reflush them, whatever you want to do. So it's probably going to be an expansion. I feel it would be healthy if they did that and reinvented their characters, let's say.
Just when we talk, new characters, yes, they need to build them properly, and I agree with that. New characters are always cool, new settings, whatever. Build them properly, start from the foundation and make arcs, that's cool. And when you're talking about Thrall or Jaina or Khadgar or whatever, when you bring those, a good example here that I mentioned Flame, when you bring those in, do make justice to their legacy. This is what basically Flame is saying. They have to be done justice. You cannot do them like you did it in Shadowlands. And I think that's it. We want this story of WoW to be good, and we would like to be invested in it in all the aspects as we were in the past. Hopefully, our discussion here resonated with some of you. Hopefully, it doesn't fall on deaf ears. It's just two guys that are still in love with the game, and it's past mostly. Let us know what you think in the comments about this. What's your take on the whole situation with the story of Shadowlands, or how it concluded? What are you expecting from the next expansion, which we will know next month for sure what it will be and where it will place.
Thank you to the patrons for supporting the podcast as well. And if you're listening on Spotify or any other online platforms, you can check the youtube.com/mocast, is it?
Yes.
You can check the podcast there as well. Give a like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. It really helps the channel grow because it's still a little bit small, and we
working on it.
Ideally, if people enjoy this, we want to spread it to as many people as possible.
We're working on it, and be sure to tune in on next Monday because we will have the Breaking WoW series on Mocast with Guiltias, Panthea, Word Up, and Mandel to talk about the inner workings of 9.2, the raid, the dungeons, the gear sets.
It's going to be juicy.
It's going to be very, very interesting. Up until that point, thank you for listening or watching. Bye-bye!
Later!
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.